Hello, I'm Pam Vaughn. I am a Stow resident. I've been living in Stow for over 30 years, and I am a author of picture books, and I also write middle grade. And I'm here with my friend Marietta Apollonio, and we're going to talk about our books. My book, Missy Wants a Mammoth, and her books, Wombat and the Family Tree, and Jack the Library Cat. I used to be the soccer coach at Neshoba Regional High School for 17 years, and now I am part of the SCBWI organization, which is a society for children's writers, children's book writers and illustrators, which is a worldwide organization for children's book writers and illustrators. And I am the assistant regional advisor for New England. So I help run events and retreats and all kinds of cool things for authors and illustrators.
Hi, I'm Marietta Apollonio. I am a resident of Harvard. I write and illustrate picture books for kids and adults. I also write chapter books and early readers. When I'm not writing and illustrating, I'm wandering the woods or trying to find the best cup of matcha tea. I am a member of SCBWI, and I spend a lot of my time mentoring other illustrators and authors, visiting libraries and schools. And I'm happy to be here with my friend Pam.
Yes.
I wanted to start off by asking you, Pam, when did you become a writer?
Well, I think I've been writing for a long time. I didn't realize that I was writing for a long time, and I think that I was doing so many other things, not thinking that writing was actually a thing. And then I had my sister's kids over for a week, and I thought, well, what are we going to do? And I had the activities planned and during the day, and then I thought, what are we going to do at night? We'll read some books. And then I thought, well, what if I write a story about them? And so I kind of started writing the story about the kids, and I changed their names, but they knew who they were. And I thought this would be good because if their behavior is a little bit off, things might happen in the book that they might not like. So anyway, so we kind of started doing it and then meeting some other people in town who were writers, and I just started kind of meeting more people and learning a little bit more and getting into critique groups and finding out about SCBWI, and kind of just kept going from there and then got more and more involved.
How long did it take for you to have your first book come out, Missy Wants a Mammoth?
Well, this was not the first book I wrote. I've written other books, but then this one seemed to catch the eye of my critique group, and they really liked it. And when you just write some words and it's not really a thing, it's hard to imagine. So you have other people that are saying, I can so see this as a character. I can so see Missy on a cover of a book, and they really liked it, and they kept pushing me to stay with it. So that's what I kept doing. And it takes way longer than anyone would expect, but you can't give up if you actually want it to come out. So I ended up doing a mentorship. I signed up for multiple mentorships, didn't always get in, and then I finally got in, spent more time working on it, and then I got an agent, and then we went on submission with it and sold the book.
Can you tell us a little bit about Missy Wants a Mammoth, how you came up with the idea, any interesting facts or research that you had done?
Yeah, Missy Wants a Mammoth is a book about Missy, who she and her brother Mason are going into a natural history museum, and she really wants a pet mammoth. And
we all want pet mammoths.
Hopefully by now we all want pet mammoths. And for some reason, the mammoth in the room is that there are no mammoths, and her kind, compassionate brother is trying to explain that to her. However, Missy, being Missy, is quite determined, and she is going to name him Malcolm, and she's going to take bubble baths together. She is going to take him for walks, and it's a big question of whether she is or is not going to get a mammoth.
And did you do research about mammoths for this, or were you previously interested in mammoths?
I was not necessarily, but I did a lot of research. I did a lot of research about series on, I wanted this book to be a series. I did a lot of research on natural history museums. What do they look like? What's inside them? I did a lot of research on mammoths, of course. I did a lot of research on extinct animals and de-extinction, which is fascinating. I watched a lot of videos of Snuffleupagus because he is a woolly mammoth. And that was part of research. So yes, I have learned a lot of stuff about mammoths, like mammoths get baby tusks, just like kids get baby teeth. And then they then get adult tusks. And yeah, that they have different types of hair, and they have hair that can be 20 inches long.
Oh. And are their tusks when they're adults, are they just curved, or do anything interesting happen?
I believe they curved to the opposite direction.
Interesting.
Not like straight like an elephant. Yeah.
Great. And so your characters over here, that's Mason, and this is Missy with the red hair. And did you know that the illustrator was going to create a character for Missy that had red hair? Because, you have red hair.
The fascinating thing is that I'm just the author. I give my words to an illustrator, as you know, and the illustrator comes up with the characters. I don't tell her anything about what they look like. And this character, coincidentally, the illustrator never even saw me until after. And so it's based on a friend of hers who is originally from Massachusetts. My illustrator's name is Ariel Landy. She was from Weston, Mass, and then has lived in France for many, many years. And so, yeah, it was based on her. So she never saw me. I never saw her. We never spoke until the book was finished.
Wow, that's so interesting. She came up with that character.
It's very interesting. And funny thing is, I had said to the editor, I have this idea, like, what if we hide little bits of Malcolm, the mammoth, inside the story? And she said, well, let's let the illustrator decide what she wants to do. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then lo and behold, months into the project, I get a call from my editor saying, guess what Ariel wants to do? She had an idea to hide little bits of mammoth in the story. And I was like, awesome. So, and we knew it was a good match.
Yeah, it's always great when illustrators can hide little Easter eggs throughout stories, because it gives kids an additional something to look at in the illustrations and pay attention to, and just have a fun find.
Yeah, I don't know if this can show or not, but you can see there's a little hidden mammoth, a trunk right there, that the stuff, that sort of the kind of things that are hidden in there. You are an author illustrator, so do you intentionally put some Easter eggs?
I do. I have, in both of my books, I have put Easter eggs.
Awesome.
In Jack the Library Cat, there's a little white mouse hidden throughout the book. Well, sort of hidden, but
I love the mouse.
Yes, the mouse doesn't have any part in the story other than to be a fun little thing for kids to look for on every page. And in Wombat and the Family Tree, there's not an search and find kind of Easter egg per se, but there is my love of Bob Ross growing up. I used to recreate his paintings. So there are a few references to Bob Ross in that book, just for me and for adults and anybody else that might be able to find them. And
can you tell us a little bit about each of your books?
Sure. Jack the Library Cat is the first book that I author illustrated. It came out in 2023. It is about a stray cat who loves to sneak into the library for story time, though the children's librarian is not a fan of cats. And one day Jack causes a little bit of ruckus and he gets booted from the library. a new boy comes to town and needs a reading buddy, and that little boy sneaks Jack into the library every day for reading time. And at the end, everybody seems to come around and realize it's really fun to read to cats.
Awesome.
So it's about, taking care of animals, literacy, all good things. And Wombat in the Family Tree came from my love of family trees and family stories, pictures, but also noticing how my son would have a hard time trying new things sometimes and might try it once. And if it didn't go well the first time, wouldn't try again. So, yeah, it's about a lot of things. And Little Wombat is the main character of the story, and he has a dog who's pretty much his best friend named BR for Bob Ross. And Wombat creates a family tree. He includes friends on that family tree, everybody that's special to him.
Oh,
but it was really fun. For Jack the Library Cat, I actually did this book all in watercolor, color pencil, mixed media. But Wombat in the Family Tree, I switched to digital and did digital illustration for that, trying to mimic traditional watercolor.
Yeah, they're both very different, but I love the palette. They're both very colorful, and this one's a little softer. This one's a little bolder. Needs to be bold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Library-esque.
Yeah.
Is there anything, any relation with this story and Stow by any chance?
Yes, actually there is. When Pam and I were visiting the Stow Library one day.
Before it was under construction.
Before it was under construction. I had never been to the Stow Library, and we went upstairs. It's upstairs to the children's area, and there is, or hopefully still is, because it's under construction, they're going to leave this beautiful window in that room. And I took a picture of it, and I put that window in one of the illustrations in the story because it was just a beautiful space.
So Jack the Library Cat has a special connection to the Stow Library. It had some inspiration there.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you talk about the sparks of your story. When I was trying to come up with this story, I wasn't trying. I was coming up with an idea, and it was like two things that are opposite. And I was like, what are those things that would be unlikely pairs in a story? And then then I came up with characters, and then I was like, okay, who are these characters? And then what do they want? And then it was like her voice, Missy's voice just came to me. And then she just says things that she wants. And then one of the things was a mammoth. And I thought, oh, how is she going to get a mammoth? Like, she can't have a mammoth. There's no way. And then I had to figure that out. Can she or can't she? And what is that going to look like? So it was a puzzle and a lot of fun to try to work with that. And what's unique about this book, a little bit unique, is that it's all in dialogue. So they just talk. Missy says, I want a mammoth. Mason says, you can't. And just talk. But, I got many rejections from agents about that, because I had one agent say specifically, all dialogue books don't sell. Of course, I thought, really? So I went to the Stow Library and I took out every single book I could find on dialogue, all dialogue. And guess what? There was lots and lots. And my husband was like, what are you doing? I'm like, figuring something out. And so I said, this can be done, and I'm going to do it. And so I just kept staying with it. And yeah, I kept it all dialogue, and I just felt like the voices matched.
The voices in your book are incredible. When you have the interactions just between Missy and Mason and their back and forth, it's hilarious and it's very sweet. And I do have to say that your ending is just incredibly clever as well.
Thank you. And there's a lot of, I think the illustrator, what she did, and I respect the illustrations, is she added so much emotion and so much activity for, I mean, one of the fears of all dialogue is just talking heads, just two characters talking,
Just standing there,
Right.
looking at each other.
And Ariel, she illustrated, she gave animation to them. She gave so much emotion. Of course, losing your patience could bring around a lot of emotion and imagination. There's a lot of imagination
There
too.
is. I do love how her backgrounds are just, there's a lot to look at in her backgrounds as well, which helps with like the all dialogue manuscripts, because it just gives the reader, extra things to see, where it's not just the two characters. They're there because they're the ones that are talking, but there's just other things to look at as well.
Oh, yeah. And originally I was the two voices were going to be in different colors, to distinguish who was speaking. And then the editor called me and was like, so the illustrator has used so many colors and every page has lots of colors. We're going to have to come up with another idea. So in order to differentiate the two voices, we used a different fonts.
Yeah, that's a great way of doing it. And it's very apparent when you're reading the book. So
Yes.
It's very clear, like, okay, this is Missy speaking and this is Mason.
Yes. Yes. And funny thing, at my launch of this book, which was in August, I brought my 7-year-old best friend, and he and I did it together. So we just basically did the whole thing. And when this book was bought, he didn't even know how to read. And so I had told him, buddy, gonna need to know how to read because we're going on the road with this story. So we were practicing. Then it was during the summer, and I said, okay, so when are we gonna practice? And he's like, well, I have camp for 2 weeks. I'm like, not gonna work for me. Need some time. You're gonna have to come over after work. So he was coming over almost every day after work, after camp, to work on this story and do it with me. And we had so much fun practicing. And when we got to the launch, I had coached him a little bit, and he memorized the whole thing, and he just let it go. And what was fun is we had a good crowd there, and when he was doing it, and there was a very big moment, and he had to like put his hands in the air and say this big moment, and he got an ovation. And he just paused and looked at the crowd like, and I just thought, wow, for the 7-year-old to experience an ovation that he'd never experienced before was just so great. And his mom said to him, I think you're going to remember this night forever. And he said, this is the best day of my entire life. I was like, yeah. So, I mean, writing for kids is such a privilege. It's an honor. And to see moments like that was just to share the story. And for him to, one time when we were reading it, practicing, he goes, wait, that's my favorite part. And I was like, wow. And as an author who has, written this book and read it a million times, to pause and have a reader have a favorite part. I mean, that just kind of blew me away, and I'd heard that from other authors, and maybe you've experienced this too, where once it's out there, everybody experiences it their own way. And that's what's special about books, I think, is you get to experience it however you want.
Definitely. And I think when you have kids come up to you and say, I love your book, I have it, or I took it out of the library and I really love it, it's makes it all worth it. I feel like all of like the work that we put into it, all of the thinking and rethinking and overthinking, it just that kids saying how much they love it and how much they love reading it. It's just.
My daughter gave a copy to a colleague, and their grandson had read the story and said, Mason has no imagination. I thought, like, wow, he came to a conclusion about the character, and I just loved it. I just love hearing what kids think about it.
Yeah. Can you share what Gray's favorite part of the book is?
Yeah, I mean, without kind of knowing the whole story, she's very persistent about wanting it, and he said that when she's been saving money in her piggy bank to get a mammoth. And I don't know. He didn't articulate exactly why that was his favorite part, but that was his favorite part. I think it was right before the big moment, is my guess.
Yeah, she's like this perfect little kid that is just wants this thing and has really just held on to that and saving money to buy to get a mammoth like is amazing. It was
Yes.
just how you wrote her. Adults should be more like Missy sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I think resourceful
Yeah.
in some ways, and I think that it's a good, yeah, to not always give up just because someone says no to you.
Hmm.
You know, you sometimes you got to keep going and find a way. And I think I might be a little bit like that.
Yeah.
You know, don't write all dialogue. Well, I'm going to write all dialogue. That's what I think this works for this story.
Yeah. And you have another book coming out
I do.
next year,
June.
June of next year. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that is a completely different story. It's different publisher, and it is called Tenacious Won't Give Up.
Like that.
And it is about a girl named Tenacious who really wants to ride her two-wheeler in the wheel parade that afternoon. But try as she might, she just keeps crashing and smashing and falling, and she keeps trying harder. But the funny thing about riding a bike, you can't just keep trying your hardest. You have to kind of try your smartest. And she may or may not make it into the parade. We'll just have to see.
And is that another all dialogue book, or did you go a different route with that?
It is a combination of dialogue and narrative.
Oh, okay.
So it's not all dialogue. Yeah.
And were you involved in choosing the illustrator for that one?
Not necessarily. No. The interesting thing, I mean, about picture books is you don't really have a say in. I could offer some suggestions, but the editor knows and the art director, they know, you know, what's the right match. And so I trust them with that. And so, yeah, I did offer some suggestions, and then they come back with a group, and I look through those and kind of agree to someone. This illustrator's name is Leanne Hatch, and she's out in I think Washington State, out way out there. So I have not met her in person yet.
That's exciting.
It is very exciting.
Was there anything with your first book coming out that you might do differently for your next book, or
In terms of,
um, all of your marketing, or
it's an interesting thing that people don't realize with books is, you know, once you, as the author, you know, you spend a lot of time by yourself, writing, maybe working with people and helping each other. Then it's like, okay, you are a writer. Now go sell your book. You know, like you don't get a lot of help from your publisher, which it's like kind of up to you. So doing um, school visits and bookstore visits and trying to like make it, you know, just spread the word a little bit. So you can do that on your own. I'm still learning as I go because I've been doing a bunch of, yeah, bookstore visits, and I did a jamboree, and I'll do a festival. Did a couple festivals. I was at the Boston Book Festival. They had a kids section that I had an opportunity to read to kids, and that was a lot of fun. So, how about you? Have you learned? So now that you have two books,
yes, I spent a fair amount of my summer when Jack the Library Cat came out, visiting libraries, and just setting up, visiting schools, and for Wombat and the Family Tree, I decided to kind of scale back a little bit, but try to do a little bit more of bookstore visits, less school visits, although I have done a few, and hope to start getting back into library visits soon, possibly in the new year.
yes, like,
But just spacing it out a little bit more, just to give, because you feel like there's this hustle that you have to have for it, but you can kind of play the long game with it instead of trying to fit it into such a short period of time.
yeah, it's hard to tell what catches a kid's eye to want, I do think covers help.
Yes.
And I think I love the colors. But every kid's different. Every kid has their own interest, and they like what they like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you working on now?
Right now, I'm working on a book dummy for an early reader series, hopefully.
And Book Dummy is
A book dummy is, well, for author illustrators, so we create the manuscript first. After I've created the manuscript and I'm happy with it and my agent has approved it, then I start working on a book dummy, which is a bit of a process. I start with very tiny thumbnails. They are maybe about an inch to maybe about 2 inches.
Mhm.
And I sketch out what each page might look like. I've gotten a little bit faster at it, working on a lot of book dummies because I try to churn out a bunch if I can of different projects. Um, I lay out the text because that helps me to know how my composition for the page is going to be, because it's very important that you don't cover text and you leave room for the text. And after I've done thumbnails for every page, and currently early readers are about 32 pages, I just blow them up, tighten them up, and then usually pick about 2 of those spreads to do full colors because you want publishers, editors to see what your idea for the final look of the book would be. And once I've done that, I send it off to my agent and she sends it out to the editors that she thinks would be appropriate for it. Because it's a series, I include pitches for the next 3 early readers in that series as well. So that's been a bit of a learning curve. It's similar to picture books, but also very different in the writing style. You have to, less words on each page, only a certain number of sentences, no conjunctions. There's guidelines for it, depending on the level of the reader.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know if other people know this, but picture books, this is one of the things I learned when I first started writing them, is typically picture books are 32 pages.
Mhm.
They nowadays have to be under 500 words.
Yeah, it's hard to. I've always written under 500 words. I'm for picture books, so I never get into that.
If it's nonfiction, it could be a little bit longer, but I was sort of stunned by that. I'm
Right.
like, what? Under 500 words, you have to have a whole story arc, and you have to have a beginning, middle, end, and have it make sense and be fun. And it's like under 500 words. And one of the things you learn is to how to cut, how to revise.
Yep. And also know that the pictures are going to help tell the story. So there's a lot of words that you probably don't need.
Well, I find that super fascinating. I've heard it from you and other illustrators that you think that an illustrator draws pictures of the words, and what's fascinating is they draw what's not in the words. And I just think like that just blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh. And then when you look at so what I used to do is I'd read to my kids. I say, okay, close your eyes. I'm just going to read you the words, and then let them have their own image, and then show them the illustrations and be like, did it match or did it not match? I found that was a really fun exercise to do.
And would they sometimes see a secondary story in those illustrations? In some books, the illustrators will put in a secondary story in the background. Not a full story, but just go a little bit farther into the atmosphere or the character. I had pictures for Jack the Library Cat. I have parts of this book in the spreads might have photos on the wall. And so there's photos of family members and so you can so illustrators can really kind of go a little bit deeper in telling a story.
I've seen some picture books where the animals, there's often animal like a dog or a cat or the mouse having expressions telling a different story than what's happening in the story. And the reader, the young kids, they pick up on that and they love to be in on the joke or the secret, And I think my illustrator did a good job with
Yeah,
that in
she
here
did.
too. So and I just
Anytime you hear a kid laughing at a book,
yeah
you know that there's something good in there that either the writer did or the illustrator did, and they both did it great, and it came together the way it should.
yeah, and it's harder than you think.
Hmm.
Um, and getting an agent is the gateway to any of the if you want to traditionally publish to get to one of the houses, you know, Simon and Schuster, HarperCollins, I don't know any of them.
Yeah.
You have to have an agent, and
Yeah.
so you have to have, and for picture books, you have to have more than one manuscript
Yep. Before you even start to,
to submit to an agent.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was, I had a hard time figuring out what manuscripts to go with. It was possibly a little bit easier for me as an author and an illustrator to get uh, agents to look at my work without needing. I had other manuscripts. I wouldn't say they were my best work, but I had other book dummies. So that I think kind of helped a
Hmm.
little bit
Yeah.
for them to look at my work. And eventually, I was lucky enough that my agent that acquired me had already seen my work previously in an SCBWI portfolio showcase. She was a judge and she really liked my work. So when she saw the book dummy, which was passed to her from another agent, she was very excited to get in touch with me.
Ah.
Yeah.
So in terms of story, when you come
Hmm.
up with your story, I mean, how do you think as an author illustrator? Do you write words first and then try to draw characters, or do you draw characters first and then, like, you know, do you draw the cat and be like, what does this cat want? What does this
Mm.
cat do? Or do you come up with, I want to have a story about a cat in the library?
Yeah. Well, for Jack the Library Cat, it was inspired by a real life cat, not named Jack. I believe his name is Max, and I can't remember where Max lives. It might be Pennsylvania or somewhere like that. But he was not a stray cat. He had a home, uh, but the house was near a college campus, and Max liked to leave the house and go visit the college campus. My I was working at a graphic design firm at the time, and my boss emailed me a photo, and somebody had taken a photo of the poster, the paper on the college library window that said, "Please do not let Max into the library." Max loves the library, but Max cannot come into the library. Max has a home, and his family does not want him to come into the
Oh,
library. And I just, from there, that's where that idea
hmm.
kind of just popped in my head. What if there was a stray cat who loved to sneak into the library for story time? Well, what if, you know, they didn't want him there? And how does he eventually make it back in and find a home? And
So writing is a lot of questions.
sometimes it's a lot of questions. With Wombat and the Family Tree, I just started pulling from things that I really love. And actually, most of the spark for that one came from a writing workshop that I took that you were at,
Hmm.
actually. And they asked us to write down a list of things that we love.
Ah,
I
yeah.
wrote down wombats and I wrote down vintage portraits. And I said, oh, what about vintage portraits of wombats? And then slowly just thought about the things that I love and started to craft a story around it.
So interesting because wombats and vintage portraits, almost like two things that
Mm-hmm.
don't belong, kind of like Missy and a mammoth, you know?
Right, right.
Some I get so many ideas just walking down the street. I got ideas. I think of
Mm-hmm.
um I think all the time and things that just kind of make connections in my head and like what about this and what about that? And I think it's a combination of curiosity and chaos.
Yeah.
Like well and what you know what would I like to read or
Right. And you're really great at humor. I
thank
think
you.
your writing is, when you write humor, it is on point and it's funny, and it's funny for adults too. Like I laughed out loud when I read Missy Wants a Mammoth.
I have some other books that are on submission that are also humor and yeah, I think like what would I don't know. I think growing up my dad was pretty funny about
Mhm.
doing things that you would not expect a an adult to do. And so I kind of push those in my stories, I think. So
Amazing. Do you have anything you want to say to those that might want to start writing or in the process of writing or querying, or we know that like those are the trenches and it's hard and sometimes we want to give up. So
Yeah, you have to have a suit of armor
mhm,
because you're going to get told no a lot. And I think Missy may have been past, I think the 19th editor accepted. So we had like 18 passes. Um, I think that you have to know, you have to write a lot. You have to be okay with constructive feedback and be able to keep persevering when things get hard. And the industry is extremely slow and quite competitive. But the fun thing about kidlit authors and illustrators is they're kind
mhm,
and helpful. And we put a group of them together who say that they're introverts. They can't stop talking. I've learned that at my retreat that I run. I'm like, wait, why everybody said they don't like to talk, and yet you're all talking all the time.
yeah,
And I think we thrive in helping each other and learning from each other, and
yeah,
happy to help each other,
I
which I love.
agree. Having a group to share with, or having a group that understands, like, oh, this got rejected. Like, they understand, they know. Like, we've all had work rejected. It's not a fun feeling. It even yeah, it happens when you're querying, it happens when you're going on submission. Like, you will constantly be rejected, but eventually somebody's going to say yes. And then you also get to celebrate that yes with those people.
Yeah, that's the plan. And this story was bought in 2020.
Mhm.
It was supposed to come out in 2022. And then we had illustrations, I had character sketches, and then the editor called me, wanted to have a meeting. So my agent and my editor, I was really excited. I'm like, oh, I have a meeting with my agent editor. And 5 seconds on the call, it was a Zoom call, she says, I'm just going to rip off the Band-Aid. I was like, what? And she said the illustrator had to step away from the project. She was, this was a different illustrator, she was living in a different country, and COVID was quite bad there, and her family and everything, so she had to step away from the project. So I was like, so what does that mean? It means we have to wait another 2 years because illustrators need time
Yeah.
to develop characters and develop the story and the setting and all these things. And I was like, okay, that's what it takes. And then she came back with this, Ariel. And so I'm like, yay, we have an illustrator. She says, that's the good news. The bad news is she's going on maternity leave and she has another project ahead. So we had to wait more.
Yeah.
So,
But it was worth the wait.
and that's what I had learned from everybody along the way is you want the right illustrator, you wait if that's what's necessary. And I said to myself, once this book comes out, it's going to be out and I'm going to have it forever. I don't want to just have any old illustrator. I want to have the right illustrator. And the editor said, this is the right illustrator. And I said, then great, we'll wait. And it turns out when I did talk to the illustrator, she was so grateful that we waited because she had wanted to write a book about a mammoth
Oh, wow.
and didn't go anywhere. So when she had this on her desk, she was so thrilled to write it.
Oh,
So I was very
it
excited.
was meant to be.
It was meant to be. And but I think that if anybody's interested in writing children's books, it's you want to surround yourself with a community. It's so much about the community. Everybody helps each other, and I think you really want to join
Mm,
everything you can and say yes and participate
and learn.
and learn. And yeah, we don't know. Everybody that thinks they know stuff, you don't. Like yeah, I learned the hard way a lot of times.
So if we're looking at that community of authors, when you decided to start writing a middle grade, did you connect with that group to ask questions? What did you do? Or had you already been writing the middle grade and moved to picture books? Like, how have you?
Both. Yeah, I started writing middle grade, then I went over to picture books, and then I went back to middle grade.
Mhm.
So I'm in the middle of, I mean, right now I have one, two, at least 3 picture book projects and a middle grade project that I'm working on with another middle grade that's formulating in my head. Because a lot of times you're thinking before you actually write.
Mhm. And how did you research how to write a middle grade? Did you take classes? Like, what did you do
Yeah,
to
I
feel
mean,
did you read a lot of middle grade?
I pretty much read picture
I
books in
pretty
middle
much
grade.
only read middle
I
grade
mean,
picture
middle
books.
grade and picture books all the time. And I have taken a ton of classes, a ton of workshops, a ton of webinars. I'm sort of obsessed with learning. And so it's all I do is think, what else don't I know? And I have friends that are like, stop reading about structure. Stop learning about structure. You know it. Just write it.
Start writing it.
And so, yeah, you can kind of get caught up in the learning,
Yeah,
or it could be procrastinating. Not sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
When I started trying to write, when I came up with the idea for a chapter book series, I thought, well, I've only been writing picture books and this is a lot more words. And I feel like maybe I don't know how to write this. Although my 8-year-old reads a ton of chapter book series, and so do I because of that. Um, so I only felt comfortable starting by taking a class on the structure of
Yeah.
chapter books. And then I felt like, okay, I can actually do this. Even though people were telling me, no, you can do this. You should just start writing. And I was like, no, I don't feel comfortable yet.
Right. And then sometimes I think if you're going to do it, you just have to do it. You have to just start writing
Yeah.
and kind of figure it out a little bit. Then you'll have questions and feel more informed to talk intellectually about, like, where did I go wrong here? What's
Yeah.
going on? Why am I stuck here? And you
Right.
kind of come to find out when you talk to other authors that they have the same kinds of questions and issues or problems. And I just try to, I think I've learned this through always studying leaders and leadership, and is like, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you and learn from them, and um, you know, have them push you a little bit to get better. And I love that. So that's what I try to do a lot. I mean, maybe it's the coaching part of me.
You are a great coach.
Yes. So anyway, I
Yeah.
think that's
Well, I really enjoyed hearing about like your journey and about Missy and
same.
yeah.
Yeah, I love our characters.
Uh-huh.
I think
Yep.
they're fun, and hopefully we'll have some more characters out in the world
Real
soon.
soon. You for
Yeah.
sure will next year.
Yes. But yeah, thank you so much
Thank
for being here.
you.
All right. Yeah, so it's called the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. We usually say SCBWI. And that is worldwide. So there's chapters all over the world. I am a part of the New England chapter, so I'm on the regional team. So I'm an assistant regional advisor. And when I go to meetings, I just find it fascinating. I'll be with the regional advisor from Hawaii or Israel, all these different places. And it's so cool because there's children's writers everywhere. And you just become a member. So there's a website you just get on, and
It's a yearly membership.
it's a yearly membership. You think there's a student membership?
I believe there's a student
I should know this, but I
membership, or
don't.
there used to be. I'm almost positive there is still one.
So over 18,
Mm-hmm.
but there's conferences and webinars.
Yep.
Like,
Workshops.
yes, you don't have to be a member of the Mid-Atlantic region to go to their
Correct.
webinar.
Right.
And I've been to the New Jersey in-person conference multiple times. And I've been to the New York conference, which is the national conference, and the headquarters is in California. And so pretty much anybody that wants to become a member can.
Yep.
And then it gives you discounts to go to these conferences and webinars and everything. If you have to pay more if you are not a member, but you could still go to things.
And you don't have to be published.
No.
You can be pre-published. You don't have to publish traditionally. You can self-publish. But anybody that's just it wants to be involved in writing kidlit, and meeting people and learning. And I signed up when I first decided I wanted to start writing for Kidlit, and I didn't have any manuscripts. I just signed up
Mhm.
to learn. And
Yeah, I went to a friend of mine from Stow was a writer, and she told me we went to a um, little workshop. This is a long, long time ago over in Acton with uh, Melissa Stewart, who's from Acton. She writes a ton of nonfiction, so she was giving a workshop, and so I was just sitting there. And one of the first things she said is, "If you don't belong to SCBWI, you should." So of course I wrote that down and I signed up when I got home, and I had an opportunity. I was at a conference and I sat next to her. I go, I'm a member of SCBWI because of you. She's like, what? And of course, she didn't know who I was. And I then I just started getting more and more involved. I'd go to the conference, didn't know anybody, sat in the back of the room, very nervous, thinking everybody knows that I don't know what I'm doing. And then I started little by little starting to talk to people. Next thing you know, I'm putting my hand up and saying, sure, I'll help with that. And then I'll help with that. And I've also run soccer camps before. So when I took over this retreat, it coincidentally kind of was a lot similar to running a camp. I was like, I know how to do this.
hurting soccer players is
Yeah.
just like hurting writers.
Yeah. It's like a little bit different, but yeah.